Coming up on Network Africa. Citizens of Algeria celebrate after President Bouteflika abandons a fifth-term re-election bid. Former Vice President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Jean-Pierre Bemba, is suing the International Criminal Court $75 million in damages. And a huge fire guts down a busy and popular market in Nairobi, destroying property worth thousands of dollars. Hello and a warm welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. Glad you could join us after a short break for the elections here in Nigeria. We begin today in Algeria, where citizens are celebrating on the streets after President Abdelaziz Bouteflika announced that he will not seek a fifth term. Tens of thousands of people from all social classes have been demonstrating almost daily against Bouteflika's decision to stand in the election, rejecting a stale political system dominated for nearly 60 years by veterans of an independence war against France. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron says he welcomes Bouteflika's decision and that it opens a new chapter in the development of Algeria's democracy. After weeks of mass demonstrations against his 20-year rule, President Abdelaziz Bouteflika bows to pressure, ending his bid for a fifth term. After the announcement, a crowd of demonstrators took to the streets, waving the Algerian flag. Hundreds of people, young and old, joined the throng, jumping up and down with excitement. Cars beeping their horns in approval. The people say their demand for a new era of politics has been met as they await election day. However, in a series of announcements on Monday evening, the presidency said the election previously set for April will be postponed and a new constitution will be submitted to the public for a referendum. Bouteflika's statement said his last duty was to contribute to the founding of a new republic and a new system that will be in the hands of new generations of Algerians. A national conference is expected to oversee the transition, draft a new constitution and set the date for elections. It should finish its work by the end of 2019 with elections to follow. But students are protesting against the decision to postpone the polls. The protests against President Abdelaziz Bouteflika have mostly been peaceful, and analysts say the president's announcement would have diffused the potential for a bloody showdown with security forces, as it had been the case in several other Arab nations facing political crises in recent years. Joining us now to discuss more on this is an African affairs analyst, Mr. Ejeta Otuoniyo. Thank you for joining us on Network Africa today.
Tony, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Firstly, what do you make of President Bouteflika not seeking a fifth term?
Well, I guess the people of Algeria wrote very boldly on the wall. And it was also a good thing that Bouteflika and his cronies were able to read the writing on the wall that enough was enough. I guess so many things had worked against him over the last 20 years that he had been there, especially the fact that his health had been failing since 2013. Yeah. So I guess the resistance, which was also fairly very peaceful, sent a bold statement to them that the time was up. Okay. And there was no choice at that point.
But the Algerian people seem to have won this battle, but there's still the battle of who's going to be re-elected. Do you think they'll get who they want, or even could the army probably intervene in this instance?
It's not likely there's going to be a military intervention. I'm happy about the choice of your word to say that he won the battle.
Yeah.
So I mean there are many battles in the war. And the fact that Bouteflika has promised constitutional reforms, a conference leading to a new constitution, should be taken with a pinch of salt, because we're not sure where this is going to head to, how it's going to pan out at the end of the day. Truth be told, if he's going to oversee the Constitutional Conference, we're not sure who is going to succeed him. And especially the fact that he had also been ruling through a cabal, military, secret police, who had been backing him for the past 20 years. I don't see, well, they should just have a bated breath on this battle and expect that there are going to be more battles to fight.
Which leads me to my next question. Why do you think he postponed the elections? Some critics have said that maybe this is so that he can handpick a successor. What do you think about this?
What he said, and perhaps we should believe him, is that there is a need for a new constitution to be delivered to the country to enable the new generation take over the reins of government. What had happened in the past 30 years is that the old brigade who fought for independence from France had been the ones in the reign of power, in the seat of power in Algeria all the while. So what he has said, and which will resonate with the younger...
Do you think that could happen, though?
Well,
allowing the younger generation?
It could, because if you find out, about a quarter of the population of Algeria is below 30. So the young ones are really yearning to have a feel of how to govern their country. And he's been on the wheelchair for close to 7 years now. It really comes to public glare, and he's been ruling. So there must be a change. There must be a change.
Protests like this are still going on in a lot of African countries like Sudan, but the leaders refuse to heed the voice of the people, and even some protests turn really deadly. What's the difference here, and what can other African countries learn here?
So the case of Sudan is a little bit complex. Complex because Sudan has been playing, Omar Bashir has been playing lots of transactional politics with the international community, which makes him to handpick what country and what group or what bloc to deal with. That way he is able to get some international tacit support to enable him continue his repressive regime in Sudan. In this case in Algeria, what we found out is that the colonial master, France, had backed off the support because the constitution was being tinkered with to see how he could extend a 20-year term to a 25-year term. The man is 82. He wants to rule into his grave. And the people said no, but the case of Sudan, Omar Bashir is still healthy. And aside from that, the case of repression in Sudan has been a long-standing thing. The people are impoverished, they're beleaguered. So I guess the power to fight also, they're drained. Quite unlike the Algerians, who are still bubbling and ready to fight. Much more battles.
Big difference there.
Big difference.
Well, it's obvious that President Bouteflika's health was a major factor that led to this, but there are some other leaders who have ill health but still cling on to power, taking medical trips abroad. We've seen it in a lot of countries. What should they learn from Algeria's president?
Well, the people should be resolute. And it only tells us that ultimately power belongs to the people. And this has been shown by the action of the Algerians. And something remarkable was even the judiciary, over 1,000 judges, a couple of days ago, sent out a bold statement to say they were not going to be part of the electoral process if Bouteflika contested. That's judicial activism, something that is dying all over Africa. They sent out a bold statement, and I think that African countries should be encouraged not to give up. Of course, this sectarianism that runs across Africa, in no time will have to give way for the voice of the people.
Mr. Ejeta Otuonio, African Affairs Analyst, it was a pleasure speaking with you.
It's a pleasure, Tenny. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now to more of our other top stories today. Lawyers from the former rebel leader and vice president of DR Congo, Jean-Pierre Bemba, who was acquitted of war crimes by the International Criminal Court last year, are seeking nearly $75 million in damages. They want compensation for what they say was his unlawful detention, legal fees and losses due to the alleged mismanagement of his assets seized by the court. The assets included 7 aeroplanes, 3 villas in Portugal, 3 parcels of land in DR Congo and 2 boats. Local media says the amount he's seeking is just under half of the ICC's annual budget of some $168 million. Mr. Bemba, a successful businessman and an opposition politician before his arrest, was acquitted in May last year of crimes committed by members of a militia under his command. His legal team said if awarded, part of the amount would go to pay reparation for war victims. French President Emmanuel Macron is in Djibouti and has met with President Ismail Omar Guelleh at the presidential palace. Mr. Macron seeks to reassert the importance of France in its former colony, increasingly fearing China's muscular role in Africa as it expands economic and military influence across the continent. He's on a whirlwind tour of East Africa and is expected to visit a military base in the country. Djibouti, located at the southern entrance to the Red Sea on the route to Suez Canal, hosts France's largest naval base on the continent. Macron is the second French leader to visit the East African country in the last 20 years. Now, the world is still reeling from Sunday's plane crash in Ethiopia that claimed the lives of 157 people. Passengers from more than 30 countries were on board the Ethiopian Airlines flight from Addis Ababa to Nairobi. Among the victims were 2 Nigerian professors, Professor Pius Adesomi and Ambassador Abiodun Bashwa, 32 Kenyans, 18 Canadians, 9 Ethiopians and 7 Britons, according to a passenger list from the doomed flight published by Ethiopian officials. A number of passengers are also believed to have been with the UN.
Family and friends of victims of the Ethiopian airline accident paid their last respect at the crash site. Many grieving uncontrollably as their loved ones are lost forever.
We have lost our mother and our brother in the airline, and we just came here. We have been assisted by both the governments here, and we are waiting for the embassies to come here.
This woman mourns the death of her daughter, who was one of the air hostesses on the plane. Filled with anguish and pain, Kabewe Lagese, mother of the cabin crew member, wailed and cried as she paced around the crash site. The friend of another victim of the ill-fated flight also wept as he looks at pictures of his loved one on his phone. Memorials were held on Monday for some of the victims as investigators seeking to find the cause of the accident discovered the black box with the cockpit voice recorder and digital flight data. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees also paid tribute to his fallen colleagues.
Many of those people who lost their lives were members of the UN and aid community, and 3 of them were colleagues, UNHCR colleagues from my organization. And today, here in Geneva, we mourn them particularly.
China, Indonesia and Ethiopia have ordered their airlines to ground the Boeing 737 MAX jet. Argentina, Mexico, Brazil have also followed suit. The Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore says it was suspending operation of all variants of the Boeing 737 MAX aircraft in and out of its country. However, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, makers of the plane, have told the airlines that it believes the MAX 8 model is airworthy despite the fatal crash.
Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of those who lost their lives in the tragic incident. You're watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Still ahead, a Malawian woman fights to keep young girls in school. Please stay with us.